Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. As we just got done saying, welcome to the battle and our Faith in Your Recovery podcast. When you're tired of the fight, feeling defeated by the struggle and ready to throw in the towel, one piece of advice: don't do it. There's 24/7 access on your favorite podcast platform to listen to the advice, support, love, and compassion we want to share. And we're certain, and we know you haven't come this far to only come this far. We may be just what you need. No, we don't have all the answers. We don't even have all the questions. However, after nearly 9 years of touching, changing, and saving lives, we believe we can impact yours. Because of your support, encouragement, and involvement, we're now over 100 weekly episodes of Faith in Your Recovery. More than once, we've been ranked in the top 100 of all not-for-profit podcasts in the United States. We've been as high as 36, 45, 54. Today, it was yesterday, September 19th, 2023, we were ranked number 98 in the nation. We're pleased with that and proud. God's done a wonderful work, provided us some great information and interviewees. These rankings are sent out by the National Podcast Ranking Organization, known as PodStatus, at, I believe it's, I'd have to look that up again. I failed to write it down here, but it's podstatus.com. Check it out. Our goal is to make the top 25, and we think with your support, listening, involvement, we'll do so. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share. Then tell a friend. You have our pledge and promise that we'll continue to address all things recovery. Today, our special guest is Jeremey Spencer. Welcome aboard, Jeremey.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, we look forward to what you have to share. Go ahead, introduce yourself to our listeners out there. Then we'll get into your history, and before we're done here, we'll come up to where you're at today and the godly successes you're experiencing. So tell them a little bit about Jeremey.
Well, I guess to begin with, I just need to state that I'm a person in recovery. I'm actually a certified addictions peer recovery coach for the Delaware County IRACS program. It stands for Integrated Reentry and Correctional Support. We're been active for about a year now. It's a new pilot. It's no longer a pilot program. We're actually called a legacy site, but we'll be training sites for every other IRACS program in the state of Indiana.
So tell us what that means.
So we provide peer support services for incarcerated individuals. We help guide them to learning new concepts, precepts, coping skills through evidence-based practices. As moving forward in recovery, learning to overcome criminal behavior. We utilize groups like the Matrix Model, RAP groups, several different evidence-based things to help provide support for an individual that's probably never had support in their life.
The recovery movement has certainly changed over the years. I remember back in the day where we thought we could incarcerate the problem away, and we've come to realize we may have to incarcerate, but we can still educate and promote and help and offer services to them while they're in there. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. We hope to create interventions along the way. Like the past model in incarceration had usually been that somebody falls on their face and either they get it together or they don't, and they go down the road. But we're hoping to provide different intervention points that hopefully they don't fall all the way down, and maybe we can change the direction of their life before they hit that point.
What does one of those intervention points look like?
Well, we utilize the sequential intercept model. So generally every time that they come into the jail, we provide peer support services or offer those peer support services to them. Now, obviously, they have to accept that, and they have the right to deny that, but most of them generally tend to work with us. We can be an advocate for them. We can give them a voice to community corrections, probation, or the courts that they might not have. We can also really just provide support. That's a big thing. A lot of the times, these guys just never have anybody that seems to care or listen to them.
This has to be a first for some of them that have felt that sense of worthlessness that society has laid upon them, such a lack of value. And then to have someone come alongside and say, hey, we're here for you, we're here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of guys tell me, I wish this had come along a long time ago. This is the first time I've ever heard or seen anything like this, or had anybody come in and actually feel like they truly cared.
I remember back to the day where you had to whisper if you had an addiction issue or a family member did. You told that in private, and you had people swear they wouldn't tell anybody else that you told them that they're dealing with that in their home. Today, it's one of the things we can speak out loud, and I think that's impacting the positivity of recovery and the help can happen because we can be honest about who we are and the problems we have.
Well, absolutely. They say that you only get to keep what you got by giving it away.
I get that.
It's very important that we share our stories and give them hope, because when they see us in the jail and know that we've been through the same similar struggles, they start to believe, well, if they're capable of doing it, then I'm capable of doing it. And I believe that every one of them is capable of doing it. If I didn't believe they were capable of change, then I have no business being there.
Yeah.
And I believe every one of them is capable of change, and they need somebody to be able to follow that's been there, that's found freedom or liberation from the struggle of addiction.
We learn by example many times, good or bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, let's back up. You've told us a lot about where you are today professionally and how you're operating. Tell us now a little bit of your history, your story. Tell us about where your addiction began. First off, tell the folks where you're from, Jeremy.
Well, I'm originally from Marion, Indiana. That's where I'm born and raised. I currently live over in Jonesboro, which is just outside of Gas City, right there in that same area. I've left state a few times, lived in Florida a few times, and I've been quite a few different places. But it always seems to bring me back here to Indiana.
Jonesboro, Grant County is what you claim as home at this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go back early in life. What was your childhood like?
I had a pretty good childhood in comparison to a lot of other people that I've met. I mean, I got a very strong mother that's been such an inspiration in my life. And my dad, I remember when it was good, let's just put it that way, between my father and my mother. But then my father fell prey to substance use, and he struggled with alcohol. And
how old were you at that time?
I would probably say 7, 8.
Okay.
And that probably went on for a couple years until it got to the point where he, it used to be when my father got home, my mom would send us kids to bed because it was getting ready to be an argument or a fight. It wasn't going to be good. And you would hear hollering and screaming and things getting thrown or what have you, fight going on. And, my mom valuing and having the values that she had, didn't take her marriage lightly. And they'd been together for 15 years before my dad turned abusive towards me. And that's when she said, all right, that's enough.
So how old were you when that began, the abusiveness?
Well, that didn't last for long. That was a deal breaker for her. So that wasn't something that carried on for a long time. It was a pretty bad incident where he struck me. I was my mom had put me in some karate classes as a kid to try and deal with my anger. Because I don't know exactly why I was angry at that point, but my brother, I was showing him some stuff, and I had actually accidentally struck him in his private parts, throwing him a kick, and of course I had to answer to Dad when I got home. When he got home about that, and when he approached me about it, he turned around and he needed me in the privates, and that was.
How old were you? Ballpark.
Maybe 10, 8, 9, 10. So I don't know right now. I'll be honest with you. I don't know exactly what age that was.
That's okay, but that's the general range.
Yeah, probably 8 to 10 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Was he still into his drinking at that time? Was that a part of it as well?
Actually, my mother filed for divorce the next day. And they split up, and I was a daddy's boy. Regardless of all that, I still wanted my father in my life. And but he checked himself into Koala Center, and the next day, after she had filed for divorce, and he went to treatment, and he actually, before he passed, had over 30 years in sobriety.
Hooray for him. Sorry for the incidents and all that took place, but hooray for him that he found that kind of freedom, sobriety, and recovery, okay?
Right.
Yeah. What did you learn from your dad throughout all of that, Jeremy? What did that teach you?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I didn't really get a huge taste for alcohol. I mean, not that I didn't drink in my own addiction, but it wasn't really my bag, if you would say. I moved more towards the illicit drug side of things because I just didn't really gravitate towards that, although I did drink. I guess the biggest thing I took away from it that was a struggle for me was I didn't want a split family, because I seen the hurt that my father went through, like having lost his wife, having lost his family.
Sure.
And
you saw the abandonment from several different angles.
right. I seen the loss on the family. I seen it in my baby sister that never knew my parents together like that when it was good. Because she was 7 years younger than me, so she doesn't have a recollection of them together.
Yes. All right. You talked about how when you were in that 8 to 10-year-old range, you went through that abusiveness. Then it was right away that your mom filed for divorce. The separation came about in due time. Take us to the next step. Maybe those 10 to 15, that age range, what was happening in you?
Well, at that point, I'm feeling kind of just walking in a daze because, I love my father, and, I was just kind of taken back by him no longer necessarily being, I don't want to say he wasn't in my life, but he moved out of town to find work and, just trying to get his own life back together. So it was a lot of, because my mom had went to work to support us 3 children. I mean, she was already working before the divorce, but we were kind of left a lot to our own devices, if you will.
It changed the entire family dynamics. Yes, you became responsible for yourself at a young age.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, I shirked a lot of that responsibility off onto my younger brother, Scott, that was about a year younger than me. And he really stepped up and was there more for our baby sister than probably I was. I mean, I was there, don't get me wrong, but he took that role on.
Maybe not responsibility-wise.
I was the one that they were helping sneak out, and then I was out running the streets doing things I shouldn't have been doing at that point.
And that meant what? What were those things?
Well, eventually it started out, just kid stuff, 12, 13 years old, starting to smoke cigarettes, coming to a place where eventually I started smoking marijuana and drinking. And then, that was really kind of I would say the majority of it was lighter things like that until I started hitting a little bit older into high school. Once I got into high school, I started trying different things like LSD and mushrooms. It wasn't really until I graduated high school that I moved on to the harder substances.
Which,
yeah,
for you was what? Cocaine, heroin?
Initially, at that time, it was cocaine. You didn't really hear of heroin or methamphetamine being around at that time. Although, I take that back. Methamphetamine was around, but it was not as prevalent as it is today.
Or as popular.
Actually, I tried meth before I did cocaine, but cocaine was a lot easier to come by. Back then, you had to really know somebody that was involved with methamphetamine to find it. Personally, I think the quality was a lot more truer back then too. If you knew somebody that was actually cooking it then,
and
versus what it is today.
Nearly the risk with the fentanyl and carfentanil that we have today with any drug. Back in the day, you used a term, I don't remember for sure what it was, but the purity factor was higher. That doesn't make it better. Okay, it may make it a piece safer. It's going to destroy either way. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely, I'm not promoting the substance itself. What I'm saying is the effect that it had on me physically compared to the substances out there at the latter part of my substance use. And that could have truly been a lot of it because of the earliness in my use, because I ended up using for 33 years.
33 years.
Is how long I was in addiction total.
Your main drug of choice during that time?
Well, what do you got?
Okay.
I was equal opportunity. I didn't go broke, and I did it a lot. I mean, I just like to get high. But I was definitely a speed demon.
Your drug was getting high.
Yeah, my drug was escaping reality. I did not want to not be high. And for the majority of my life, I was high.
You said that was 33 years of battling that struggle?
I started using substances at 13, and I didn't stop until I was 45.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's a long haul.
Most of the time, well, and I got into dealing drugs at a young age. That's actually where the cocaine use came from. Was I was with a girl, and I was dealing marijuana, and she made a comment like, "Why don't you deal something that you can make some real money on, like cocaine?" And we kind of split up, and that's next thing. And it was so weird. It's like almost like the devil was there, waiting for that little comment to hit, and then the next thing I know, somebody's offering me methamphetamine. I try it, and then all of a sudden I find a connection for cocaine, and next thing I know, I'm dealing cocaine.
During that 32, 33 years of struggling with the addiction, how much incarceration was there? What were some of the pains, some of the losses during that time?
Well, I was very fortunate. I don't know if you probably heard the term prevenient grace.
Yes.
There was definitely somebody looking out for me through a majority of my life. I didn't catch any real dealing charges during the time that I was dealing. But but the relationship damages that were happening, not being the employee that I should have been. As I try and grow into these things, that a lot of people would call themselves a functioning addict. I don't even really like the term addict. I prefer person in recovery. I think the stigmatizing that comes along with the term addict, I'm really trying to be choosing on what words I use nowadays.
And I understand that, and I get where you're coming from. Still, we're at that point where some people don't know how you draw the line between the two. So either term's welcome here, and you choose to say as you please. Don't have an issue with that at all. But whether you're an addict or somebody in recovery or, wherever you're at on that continuum, you've got the losses you just talked about there. What was one of the darkest moments for you during that struggle with addiction?
My brother, when I got out into drug court, I ended up moving in with my brother. He really reminds me scripturally of the older brother, or actually even the father in the prodigal son story. I was definitely a prodigal as far as, going and squandering, where he was more of the one that stayed true, did the right things
kept
for
his
his
head
family,
on
kept
straight,
his
for
head
lack
on
of better
straight.
terms.
Not that he didn't get into some stuff with me, but he definitely he had a child at a young age. I didn't have my child till I was 30, so that kind of pulled us a little bit more. I think pulled him in reins sooner. But he said, Jeremy, I never saw you as an addict. I saw you as somebody that liked to party, which was true until it wasn't. And somewhere along the line, I crossed a line that I didn't see. And for me, that line was when I started using intravenously. When I started using heroin, I had injured myself, and it's a common story that you hear a lot of people getting prescribed pain pills. I had bulged 2 discs in my back. This led to them giving me pain pills. The girl I was with at the time, she got a plethora of pain pills from where she had her leg snapped, and I paid $12 for all of it. I had, I don't really want to go into war stories, but just a multitude of as many pain pills as I wanted. Well, then that ended up drying up, and then all of a sudden heroin's around, and it was cheaper. It lasted longer.
Boy, we've heard this story more than
I'm
once.
sure.
I'm not diminishing yours.
No,
please,
absolutely.
But this is the way it was.
Oh, absolutely.
Things have changed, makes it much more difficult. Still illegal, but regardless, please go ahead.
Well, for me at that time when, I snorted for about a year. And not that it still wasn't causing me problems at that time, the physical addiction to it or what have you, but I was kind of at the beginning of that downward spiral because, to be honest, even in my addiction, I had ascended to where I had quite a bit of good things. I had built something out of life. I had a well-paying job. I was a journeyman roofer. I'd done pretty well for myself, even in while being addicted to substances. Was a provider for my family, but then it became
you were that functioning addict.
Yeah. And then it came to the point where I started using the needle. When I started using intravenously, it's like a whole nother addiction of its own. And at that point, I no longer had control of it. It had absolute control over me. And I would say it actually probably had control of me earlier than that. I just wasn't seeing enough of the ramifications of it to really identify it and pull back
on
from
our
it.
intro, there was an individual, a gal, it's actually Monica Grayson, made the comment, I swore I would never do that until they took my medication away. Then I started shooting up in no time. That's not the exact quote, but kind of like you're saying there. You knew there was a line between snorting and shooting up. And when you crossed that line, I think it was maybe you had the recognition factor of I've hit the bottom as far as using. Not the bottom in the sense of ready to spring forward or upward, but that took the final wind out of yourself, your sail, and you recognize, wow, this has got a hold. So, say it was 33 years. What was the lights on moment? I'm sure your mom's included in this. I know Christ is. Go ahead and share the lights on moment to where you recognized and realized you deserve more than where you're at, and only you can make it happen. Now, obviously, it takes God's strength, but I've often said, God may provide the farm. He'll never drive your tractor. You had to do the work. Tell us about that.
I'm trying to think where to start because, like I said, with it being 33 years, there's so much that happened along the way, traumas to my family. I had a stepbrother that committed suicide early on, and that was another hard thing for my family.
How old were you?
I was in probably I wasn't quite 30, but probably 27, 28.
I was 23 years old when my mom took her life.
Oh, wow.
And so I can relate to some of what you're saying there. Go ahead.
Right. So that was a real stressful thing. And to be honest with you, it was, me and him were a lot more similar as far as addictive wise in our behaviors than me and my blood brother, because my blood brother was the one that was more responsible.
Your blood brother Scott.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And me and Chris were the type that whenever we tried a new substance, it was like, dude, you got to try this, and we just kind of enabled each other or pushed each other until I really don't want to talk too much on my stepbrother.
No,
on that subject, just as far as out of respect for his daughter and
sure. No, but his loss certainly impacted.
There was a lot of things. I personally now I believe that he bought into the lie that the devil sold him, that his life wasn't worth living, and that everybody around him was better off without him here.
So what made you think your life was worth living?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was very angry with my brother because I was thinking, dude, if I got to be here, you got to be here, and you're supposed to be here with me. So I was mad at him. There was a lot of anger inside. I was angry at my dad for letting alcohol come between him and my mom. I was angry for the fact that I had to deal with, what do you call it, a stepdad and all that type of stuff being in my life because my dad
the abandonment that took place.
Having to figure out how to be a man without a man being there. Luckily, I got a strong mother that didn't play. She stood her ground, even though she's all of 5'2". She's a very strong, independent woman, and when she spoke, you knew when to listen.
Yes.
But that point that it came to, Randy, is, I came to a point in my addiction where, I had custody of my son I didn't want my son to experience not having his father in his life. And I didn't want him to know what it was to be from a broken family. And it broke my heart for that to happen to him. But when his mom said that she wanted to leave, I couldn't stop her, but I was going to make sure that I was going to be part of his life and be, especially in the formative years. And luckily she afforded me that opportunity. So I became a father at 11 months. Well, he was 11 months old when I became a single parent, raising my son on my own. And I'll be honest with you, I never felt better about myself than that period of time, from the time that he was 11 months old until right before he turned 5. And then I got into a toxic relationship, which enabled me to slip back into my substance use. I had the respect of others that saw what I was doing, because it was all on my shoulders at that point. I was going to work, I was feeding him, I was taking care of him, and luckily I had a blessing of people that assisted me in that process. But I was all about being the father that I didn't have.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of guilt and anger and frustration come in, that I kind of fell into that same trap. All that I didn't want to be, I became. It reminds me, like, Paul, why do I do these things that I don't want to do?
I love those words of Paul.
Yeah.
And it just deals with, I don't want to do that, but it's the thing I always do. I wish I could get away from this, but I keep going back to it.
Absolutely.
And that parallels a lot of life. Go on.
It's just like a dog coming back to his vomit, because in earlier parts of my life, I could identify, like, all right, you're slipping here. You need to pull it back together. And I would back away from the addiction. I would move back to staying focused on my priorities and my values. But just like a dog coming back to his vomit, when I thought that I was okay, when I was doing well enough, I would go back to using those substances again. Every time I went back to him, I fell just a little bit farther and a little bit farther.
Here's what I'm picturing beyond your visual there that you just gave us. You're taking 3 steps toward the drug, but then you're only taking 2 steps back away from it. You kept it within range to reach in your own head and heart, instead of turning around and walking the other way.
Yeah.
Either way. So that lights on moment.
That lights on moment. It's kind of hard to I can see it now. Right before I got incarcerated, because I believe nobody comes to the Father without the Father calling them, and it wasn't any man or individual that brought me to Christ. It was Holy Spirit that brought me to Christ. I had been in intravenous methamphetamine psychosis and heroin. I was a speedballer. I like to shoot heroin and methamphetamine together, and I was doing quite a bit of it, enough to kill most people, 3 to 4 times a day. And
You're
I've
back
been
to
doing
that prevenient grace. It kept you alive.
I got to the point where my son said he wanted to go live with his mom, and she said she was taking him, and I knew there wasn't really nothing she could do, but I knew he was better off with her than he was with me.
How old was he?
He was 13 at this point, and I overdosed 3 times that week because I just didn't feel like I had nothing left to live for. And that still didn't stop me. This carried on for a few more years, to the point where I ended up in a hospital bed with my face swollen with infection. I looked like a hammerhead shark. I mean, the whole right side of my face was just swollen out unbelievably. Within 5 hours, my face swelled out like that, and I knew I had to go to the hospital. And I was battling a MRSA infection. Hadn't been several times to the hospital to try and overcome this infection, but I could never fully get rid of it. Now they had me on IV antibiotics for 4 days. And then all of a sudden I got 4 doctors standing over me, and I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, well, we're trying to figure out why your body's not overcoming this infection. And I'm like, well, it's MRSA. And they said, no, we've killed off the MRSA. Your immune system is low. And I'm like, well, what could be causing that? Well, they said it could be several things. It could be hepatitis C. It could be HIV. And immediately I thought that one of the guys that I used to have shoot me up had switched to rig or something or other, because he had both of them. And all I could think of was like, I'm going to kill this guy when I get out of here. And, it was a scary 5 hours waiting for that test to come back. And luckily they both came back negatively. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how, because it wasn't like I was the safest person doing this. But with that being said, at that point, I admitted to being an intravenous user to the doctor, and he said, well, that's what's going on. How long you been using? I admitted to him that I've been using intravenously for 10 years. And he said, well, what happens is when you use intravenously that long, it lowers your immune system. And my body didn't have enough immune system left to overcome the infection. And he gave me another round of antibiotics and a prescription for antibiotics and sent me on my way. But he told me, son, if you don't change your lifestyle, you're going to die. It's only a matter of time. And you think that would have been enough to scare me away from it. But all I could think about was getting home and getting another shot. I hadn't had one in 4 days. And my mom had heard what the doctor said. And, I remember getting hateful with her. Because she's telling me about myself and how I need to change my life and, how I'm going to die.
Everything you need to hear, nothing you want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I kind of say some stuff. I don't remember what I said, but, get out of the car and I go inside so I can get high. And she told me later that she prayed to the Lord. She said, Lord, I just saw the devil in him and he can't have him. I gave him to you the day he was born, and I just pray that you intercede. I don't care if you got to put him in jail, what you got to do, but you stop this. That he can't have him. And 2 days later, I was in jail. And you think I'd be like, Mama, quit praying. But it saved my life. When and it wasn't a right away thing. November 15th of 2018, about 10 days after my birthday, was when I got arrested. And all I had to do was walk away. But something inside of me, just my pride, F the police. I just, I don't know what it was, but it's just something in me was not willing to walk away. I can't help but think about how comical it must have been, the cop chasing me down. As I took off running from him because he pulled a syringe out of my pocket that was loaded with methamphetamine. And here I am shooting, heroin and meth for 10 years, skinny as a rail, just taking off running from him. And him being a law enforcement officer that chases people for a living, grabbed me and throwing me to the ground. And, of course, threw a 3-piece on me and kneed me in the side. And, if I had it today, I would shake his hand and tell him, thank you for saving my life. Yes. Because I know that I'd either be dead in a ditch or I would be in prison for murder. Because I had guns. I was at a point in my addiction where I was seeing creatures under my bed and in my attic. I was hearing voices. I would accost people when I thought that they were trying to be sneaky. And then after I would accost somebody, everybody else is like, what's the matter with you? Why'd you flip out on this person? I'm like, well, this is what was going on. And then they're telling me, no, this isn't what was going on. And I'm like, so now I'm at a point where I'm questioning my own thoughts and my own sanity.
Yes.
And I'm asking myself if I'm going crazy. And the only reason that I take that back, I don't like the word crazy, if I'm losing my sanity, was the fact that I was asking myself, am I going insane? Because people that are insane don't know that they are. So that was the only thread that I believe was hold me on. And it just came to a point where, I could not stand who I was. I could not stand the father that I'd became. I mean, I would still see my son, but I was just so ashamed of who I was. and I wanted to quit. I so wanted to quit, but I just did not have it in me.
Where are
to
you
put
now
the needle
in your
down.
relationship with your son?
Oh, we have a great relationship. It's a healed relationship.
Awesome.
That was a big motivator for me while I was incarcerated. There was a man, jail chaplain named Tom South, that was there. I did a program called the Manhood Program. And he told me, Jeremy, I'm going to encourage you to be selfish with your recovery. And it's not any one thing that you're going to do that's going to make right with your son. It's going to be getting out and making that one right decision to the next right decision.
The next right step has to be followed by the next right step. All right, Jeremy, we're getting near the end here, so I have 2 questions. Question number 1, give it about a 30-second answer. What is the advice you'd like to give to anybody listening out there who's in the throes of addiction, fighting their own battle?
Trust in the process. I guess for me, mine was such a faith-based centered thing. When I came to know Christ inside and chose to believe, I beheld what the Word said. I started reading the Scriptures once I was incarcerated. I started to believe what the Scriptures said about me and who He said I was as a son of God.
Read, apply.
And as I began to believe it, I became it. And when I became a son, my behavior changed because I no longer wanted to be the person that I used to be.
Yeah. All right. Now, final question. Name of our podcast is Faith in Your Recovery. What does that term mean to you?
Faith in recovery. So for me, my recovery is solely based around my faith. It's everything.
And that's a godly faith.
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
Talking about.
Yeah, godly faith. Absolutely. I know that I know that I know that I know that Jesus is my Lord and Savior, that He got on that cross and He died for me. And I can't think about, Damon Thompson calls it the long, dark night of the soul. My long, dark night of the soul lasted for 10 years, to where I couldn't stand myself. I hated myself. But when He pulled me out of the darkness and into His marvelous light, and I felt the love, the forgiveness, the overwhelming embrace that only that Father can give you. That's when everything shifted and changed for me. And ever since I've kept my eyes focused on Him and held on to my faith, it doesn't matter what's came at me. I've lost my stepsister to suicide since I've been in recovery. I've lost my brother to COVID 3 months later. My mom had a heart attack. My stepdad's had his 4th bout with mouth cancer. I almost had a heart attack. And
whether we have addiction background, involvement, or anything, the Scriptures say life will have troubles.
Yeah, absolutely.
It happens. The deal is, how are we going to deal with it? Thank you. Thank you for your sharing, your transparency, for opening up today, for the advice that you've given. Thank you for the work that you do in the recovery community. Please keep that up. We need you. Okay. Folks, we're glad you were tuned in with us today. Be sure to listen to our podcasts. They break each Friday. Faith in Your Recovery. Apple, Spotify, any of the platforms. Listen, like, subscribe, get involved. Send us a question at podcast@ablbh.com. Give us a call. Give us a contact. We're here for you, but we want to be here with you, so join in. Thanks again. God bless. Stay in the battle. Amen.